Start recording, yes. So, as usual, before before starting, just a quick overview of the schedule for next week's. And yesterday, as I brought on Telegram, actually I published a tentative schedule until the end of the course. Okay, so we are here today, so we'll finish the examples with useEffect, basically interacting with the server, and then we will start talking about authentication, which is the last big topic of the course. Okay, so next week there will be lecture as usual on Monday, lab number 12 that is still about finishing interacting with the server. On Tuesday, lecture on Thursday, and then the rest is tentative, but I mean, I would say if nothing happens, sorry for the voice, but if nothing happens, it's almost final, okay? So there will be no lectures from 18th of May till 21st of May, okay? Because I'm away for a conference, okay? And my colleague cannot come instead of me, but anyway, I mean, we almost finished the theoretical part of the course, so it's not a big deal because we have, let's say, more hours than we actually use because we canceled one group for the lab, right, because of the low attendance. And then Monday 25th, I think we will not do this lecture because it's marked only if not finished, okay, here, in the previous week. I mean, actually the end of the week before the previous week. And there will be the labs, not next week, but the week after, that will finish all the topics for the course, okay? So when you finish this one, basically you have all the building blocks to create your application for the final submission for the exam, okay? And actually on Friday, the 29th of May, the text of the first exam will be published. It's 3 weeks before the deadline, and the deadline will be on the day that is scheduled by the Politecnico, Polito exam dates or something like this, not appelli esami. Let's do it Italian. And you find the dates here, right? So it's actually already published since a few weeks. So first date is 19th of June, okay, which should be Friday, I think. June 19th is Friday indeed. So the deadline will be end of the day, the previous day. Okay, so end of the day, Thursday, let's say midnight, okay? And we will take Friday as a day in which we check for all the submissions and so on. We expect to have 100 or more submissions, so it takes a while to do all the checks, I mean, similarity checks, checking that everybody has submitted things correctly, loading them on the server and so on and so on. As I told you during the first lecture of this course, you remember this slide, right? That's how the exam works. T0 is this 19th of June for the first exam seat, first exam call, okay? And then we will have a schedule for the next days for discussing your submission, okay? Almost all the submission will be valid, so I mean, I don't expect anything going wrong. I will publish how to submit things in the next weeks, but I mean, the procedure is quite simple. I mean, you have you clone your template through GitHub, and there will be instruction. You need to do it by enrolling yourself in the GitHub classroom that I will publish soon. And I mean, not really a big deal. We are using this system since more than 5-6 years, okay? So, I mean, everything should go smooth, okay? And here you will have the schedule for the oral exam that will take quite a number of days, I guess, because it depends on how many submissions we get at the first exam call, okay? But I mean, from experience from previous years, there will be typically more than 100, okay? Just to give you a rough idea. And it takes like 20 minutes each at least for the discussion, so we have more or less 20 people that can discuss every day. We typically are two teachers, me and my colleague Antonio, that you already met in the lab. So it will take probably for 4 days or something like this to finish all the discussions, okay? Working full time, all the day, I mean. Okay? But in case you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask maybe during the break or during the next lectures and so on. Okay? So that's the schedule. And then we will still have one last lecture, which I put at the very end of the course. So you have time to, do the labs and think about maybe even the text of the exam. That's fine. And we will solve a past exam together, which is actually the same as the previous year's exam that I solved during the lectures. It's a bit old. I mean, like 3-4 years old. I think it was 2022. But I mean, it should be well representative of what you can expect at the exam, and the difficulties, what we expect from you, and especially in terms of the design. Okay, we are not going to solve every part and write in the code for all parts, because in 3 hours, of course, that's not possible. But we are discussing the design. Okay. How to approach the problem, and advantages and disadvantages of different approaches and so on. Okay, that's the point of this lecture. And then I will publish a full solution, which is already online by last year. But I mean, there will be a small modification because this year we changed a little. I mean, just a sort of little detail how to handle the TOTP. We changed the library that we use because I mean, last year it was not very good. I mean, we used a library that probably was not so good in terms of security and use friendliness for the developer. Okay, so that's just this small difference compared to last year, and this will be reflected in the solution for the sample exam as well. Okay, and the course finishes officially basically the week of the 4th of July. And just to give you a rough idea when the text of the second exam will be published, that's 18th of June, okay, because of the dates decided by the Politecnico, because the next exam call is 8th of July, okay? Now, this information is all public, it's already published since a few weeks, but I bet you know better than me, okay? Okay, so I think we can continue the discussion about how to interact from the client with the server. And you remember that we talked about all these operations, hydrating, dehydrating, rehydrating, and so on. So one is storing the state in the server, one is recovering the state from the server, but there are also actions we would like to perform. Okay, we discussed the end client problem. There are multiple clients interacting with the same server, same APIs at the same time. And so we need to first design APIs in the correct way, and there are quite a number of issues that we need to solve, especially in the interaction with the client. Okay, so that's this optimistic state update that is sort of risky, because I mean, if the operation is not successful, I mean, what are we going to do with the client? I mean, what are we going to display to the user? And so maybe it's better that I mean, we mix this if we really want to use it. It's not mandatory for the exam with for sure a refresh of the state from the server after we perform the operation. And maybe it's also good to block user actions if it's possible, if it's reasonable for the application. until we get a response from the server, okay? And in the meanwhile, if you want to show something for the user, that's great, because the user is informed of the fact that the action is in progress, okay? Good, so we need to handle failures, especially, I mean, in general, when failures can be expected by the normal working of the application, okay? We discussed the APIs already. And before going into the code, I just wanted to tell you, I mean, we saw the useEffect, and until now, basically, we only use the useEffect for loading data at mount time, component mount time, okay? So that's a great place where, I mean, we cannot do without it at component mount time. In all other occasions, we'll try not to use it unless it's really necessary or convenient, okay? This is an example, and the same example, I mean, the same condition is present in the labs that you are developing with the list of films and so on. Let's have a look at this condition. I mean, the condition is there is a component that renders something depending on a value that it might change externally, okay? So it's like the query string, in your case for the lab, is the filter of the films, all films, favorite, last seen, and whatever else, I don't remember. And this is the perfect place where you can put a dependency in the list of dependencies of the useEffect and trigger the execution of the callback of the useEffect whenever this value changes. And this value is, in practice, it's a state. It's not a React state. It's a state that is maintained on the URL of the routes of the application, okay? Also here, query is typically what you write after the question mark in the URL. Okay, that's one possibility. And the other possibility is to do like you did probably in the lab, like /filter/ filter ID and so on. This filter ID, that's a perfect candidate to go here in the list of dependency, because whenever you want to change the filter ID, if you want to ask the new list of films to the server, you need to run a fetch and so on. And that's a side effect that has an impact on what you want to show here in the return. So that's a perfect candidate for the useEffect, okay? And in other cases, as we will do today, it's enough to pick, what was it? No need for useEffect. I mean, if the behavior is triggered by an event, like a user clicking or doing something in the interface and so on, maybe you don't need a useEffect, okay? Because this action already does something that might trigger a reload in the data from the server, either directly inside the callback of the event handler, or maybe because of what we just saw, okay? We changed the URL, and the router decides it's a different URL. It triggers the re-render of the component gets a new value, and the useEffect decides to load the correct data to be shown depending on the URL, okay? That's all I wanted to say about the useEffect. And then the rest is just sort of, how to say, warnings, okay? Be careful when you're using useEffect. You can do very complex things, and we saw a lot of these complex things in the past at the exams, because you know it's very tempting to use useEffect to implement like sort of state machines, because you can define a new state and trigger a behavior, I mean a callback, and changing other states when this state is changed. You put the state in the list of dependencies, and you can do whatever you want, and everything updates automatically. But it becomes much more complex to maintain the code, okay? Because you have a temporary state just to trigger another behavior and so on. So it's very, I mean, it becomes very complicated quite quickly, okay? So try not to do it. This is appreciated in terms of the evaluation at the exam, okay? Okay, and since you can do these things, a typical error with useEffect, I mean, if you do the graph of dependencies as problems, like as loops and so on, you might run into an infinite loop, Okay, so it means that the callback of the useEffect doesn't stop to be executed. Okay, because every time you execute a callback, you change a value that is in the list of dependencies, and this list of dependencies changes, and so it triggers the execution on the callback, and again, and again, and again, and you create a loop. Okay, that's a typical behavior that may happen also in normal programming. Okay, you write like a for loop, a while loop, and so on, without a condition that makes the loop terminate at a certain point. Okay, it may happen in many programming languages. Here it's a bit more tricky because you need to tell. I mean, it's not immediate like in a for or while, but it's a loop that is created because of the list of dependencies that trigger the execution of something that changes again the dependency and so on. Okay. Okay, so two significant cases. Well, the first is sort of trivia. The dependency array is missing, but I mean, basically, we said in our application, we should always have a list of dependency, and if the list of dependency, I mean, it's missing, it means that basically we run things at every render, which is not so useful, right? Because in theory, we could write it directly in the code of the component. We say don't do it because it's a side effect, but in theory, I mean, the result is more or less the same. So if you use a useEffect, you should have an array as a list of dependency. In the usual case, at mount time, it's empty. That's good. Or just be careful when you use object and arrays, and we see examples in a minute. Okay, so let's say we forgot a dependency. Okay. useEffect, count input changes. So we have input text value on chain, so the user form, a text value, and a text string that says how many times the input text has changed. Okay, so you type something, and this counter every time you change something. So you type a character, you delete a character, and so on. It changes, it increments, it is incremented by 1. Okay, that's good. So we have the value that is the controller form, the state named value. It's a controller form, and the count is what is shown here. Okay, and we want to have a useEffect that basically does set count c plus 1 with the callback, because the new state depends on the previous state. Remember, but I mean we should say, I mean this should happen not at every render. Okay, but it should happen only when the value changes, right? So we sort of forgot we actually forgot the list of dependency. If you render something like this, basically it doesn't work. It goes in an infinite loop, because every time you render, you execute the c plus 1, you change the state, and you trigger a re-render again. Okay, so this counter keeps increasing even if you do nothing in terms of changing the form. Okay, so what's is wrong here? The list of dependencies is missing. That's easy to catch, right? So we should add value, or whatever is the value that decides that the counter has to be increased. Okay. Okay. Otherwise, the code in the example will re-render a component forever, and this is a problem. At a certain point, I think React stops the re-render because it thinks it's a problem. Indeed, it is. Okay, so you have a sort of finite number of re-render possibilities. After that, React stops the re-render and shows an error in the console. Okay, for the exam, typically there should be no errors in the console, apart from what we say is explicitly allowed. Like, I mean, most of the browsers print in the console when you get an HTTP code which is not 200 something. Okay, but I mean this we don't care. We care about the errors coming from JavaScript. Okay. Okay, so that's easy to fix, right? Another one which is a bit more difficult to fix. So again, type text. So that's a form. Again, value, secret.value. So this time the value is kept into an object. Okay, value plus the count, just a single object. Probably not a very good way of programming this stuff, because using more than one use state is fine and actually also recommended, because it's easier to handle in the dependency lists and trigger useEffects in case, and so on. But I wanted to show you what happens in case you use, in this case, an object or maybe an array as a dependency in the list of dependencies of the useEffect. That is a problem, okay? So, you see, useState, we start with an empty value, so that the box is rendered empty in the beginning, that's fine. OnChange, that's a user stuff that, do the set of the state when something changes. So it's a controlled form again. But this time, instead of having its own state, it's a part of the state. So it takes the old object and it copies the old object and it sets again. So it overrides the value with the new value coming from the update of the box in the text box in the form. Okay? So what's the problem here? I mean, this time we are only updating the value, right? So why should it re-render? Well, actually, React doesn't know that we only updated the value. Actually, we did something more complex. Like, you see this open curly bracket? This open curly bracket means we created a new object. So there is a new reference to a new object. That is the value of the secret at the next render phase, okay? And this is also the value that is passed in the list of dependencies of the useEffect. So every time the reference to the object changes, useEffect runs the callback. And so it runs the callback and actually setSecret creates again a new object. So we go again into an infinite loop, okay? Because of the fact that every time, I mean, even though the content of the object might be the same, the reference to the object is different because we create a new object, okay? So how do we solve this situation? Well, I mean, it's no real great solution. The way to solve it, don't use objects as values in the list of dependencies, okay? And next slide will say also, don't use arrays, okay? Because, I mean, you need to recreate the values because in this way, it's mandatory for the state because for the state you need to have new references, so to trigger the re-render of React, but it becomes a problem if you use it as list of dependency, as a value in the list of dependency of the useEffect, okay? And you can test this code. I mean, we don't have so much time to test it, but I mean, it just, I also don't want to put code that basically doesn't work because then people take inspiration and think it's working, maybe I can make it work and so on. But I mean, we're starting from bad conditions, so I don't want to give an example, I mean, to test like this because it's actually something we don't want to do, okay? So the arrays have the same problem, okay? So don't use list. In this case, it's just a list, shopping list, film list, and so on and so on. It's not good to use the array, okay? You can use maybe a property of the array. That's not so uncommon, like the length. But the length captures only the condition in which, for which the number of items in the list changes, okay? So from 0 to 1, or maybe from 10 to 9, and so on, it increases or decreases. If it stays the same, the length, the callback is not called, okay? So maybe, depending on the situation, it might not be appropriate to use the length property of the array, okay? And so, in general, don't use it. How can we solve this problem? Well, this is the typical place where if you really need to have a useEffect, and so first of all, think if you really need to use the useEffect. If the answer is yes, you need to use the useEffect, actually create a state, a temporary, a state that you can update. It's just a single value, Boolean, a number, whatever, that you change when you want to trigger the execution of the callback of the useEffect. Okay, so it's under your control, and you decide when you trigger the execution of the callback. Okay, so that's a way to solve it. Okay, but in general, avoid if possible, because as I told you before, I mean, the more states you have, the more complex the application becomes. Okay? It's not about the state that contains data. Those are easy to handle. I mean, I loaded a list, there is a state with a list, that's fine. And I loaded an object that describes the user, that's fine. Okay? But the states that gets updated depending on what the user does and so on creates a complex state machine that it becomes difficult to handle. Okay? And sometimes you forget a state or a condition or a transition and so on, and maybe the application may not work in all cases. Okay, so just a set of warnings about useEffect, and then just a few more slides just to conclude, to finish the discussion about the hooks, because this is the last hook we are going to see in this course, and then we will code and finish the example that we developed so far for the application with the list of answers. Okay, so just a few more words about the hooks. How do the hooks work? So what's the magic behind useState, useEffect, and so on? How can the same function return different state variables, right? useState true, useState 0. I mean, useState is always the same function for React, right? It's not because we call it with a different value, because we could have two states, true, or false, or 0, and so on. How can the values be persisted across function calls, and how can the same function return different state variables? Well, actually, I mean, React does a lot of things when you call these hooks, okay? Particularly the state and the effect, okay? So every time you call the use something, the React associate an array of hooks, hook slots to each functional component, okay? So under the hood, the first time the React sees a new component, it creates an array to store hooks, okay? And slots are contains the function and the value in case of the state, okay? So each time you call a hook, a new slot is used, okay? At mount time, it's populated, the slot is populated, and then after re-rendering, just the slots are read. Just from the first to second and so on, until you finish calling the use states. Okay? So the first time, indeed, the hook is created, so the initial value is put as a value of the state, and the function to update the state is stored as well. And the other times, the next times, at re-render, it's just simply reused. So it goes into the array, it takes the current value, and it returns the current value. Okay? And then you call it again, and it knows that it already read the first slot. So it goes to the second slot, it returns the value of the second slot, count, and third slot, mod, and so on. And this also explains why when you are testing the application and you see the debugger of the plugin that helps you debug React components and so on, you only see the numbers for the hooks, not the names, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, because they are slots into an array. And there are no names. The names are the name of the variable inside your application. So they are not names, named, okay? And that's the point. And this I'm telling this not just because I wanted to tell you how React works internally and so on, but because this has a consequence, okay? React must know which functions may host hooks, and I mean, okay, that's good, but I mean, this is fine because as React calls the function that implements the component, so it knows it is inside the component, it can associate the array to the component, that's fine, that's easy. The point is, from the point of view of the developer, the hooks must always be called in the same order each time a component renders, okay? Same order. Because every time you call a hook, you consume a slot in this array, okay? And it means that you cannot basically take this use state and put it into a loop, into an if, and stuff like that. Okay? Because otherwise, depending on the value of the conditions, you call these hooks in a different order. And this doesn't work anymore. Okay? We never did it indeed, but I mean, just to remark, this is not possible. Okay? So, so only call hooks at the top level of the React function that implements the component. Don't call hooks inside loops, condition, nested function, and so on. Okay? And indeed, that's what we did, right? In a minute, we will see the code, but you remember app starts with a list of hooks before doing anything else, right? So, I mean, that's the usual place, and that's also the best place where you should call hooks at the beginning. So, no conditions, nothing. Every time you execute the function that implements the component, you call the hooks in the same exact way, because this is written in the stone, in the code, okay, of the component. Of course, you can edit it, but I mean, it means it's another application, you stop it, you restart it, and so on. But I mean, this is just development, okay? When you execute the application, these calls are always made in the same order, okay? So this consumes 5 slots in this array that React maintains for us associated with the app component, okay? Good. And only call hooks from React functions, of course. I mean, but this is quite easy to understand. I mean, React has to associate the hooks to some components. Okay, so if you call them outside of the component, it's a problem because the React doesn't know where to put it, because it has this array associated with the component and has no array outside it. I think it doesn't make sense as well. Okay, so don't call hooks from regular JavaScript function. You can call hooks from React function components. That's what we do typically. You may call hooks from custom hooks, but we are not discussing custom hooks in this course. Okay, so I mean, defining hooks that does something different from the standard ones, and it's another topic. Okay. Okay, so in short, the discussion summarized into: do not call hooks inside loops, condition, or nested function. Do it at the beginning of the React component definition. That's fine, okay? And the rest is just for the curious. Okay, good. So unless you have questions, I think we can go on and try to finish. I mean, we will finish the example, the question and answer example, because we still have to implement 2 functionalities, right? The add and edit. We already have the delete that talks with the server, and we need to implement the other 2. Okay, and that's also what you're going to do in next lab. Okay, I already published the solution for the lab 11, loading data from server with the useEffect with the empty list of dependency, but you need to then complete the solution. Okay, making the delete, add and edit work. And that's what we are going to do now. Okay, so how does this work? Well, actually, I just changed the folder because I hope it's easier for you to find the stuff. I mean, we can continue committing, but then you need to go back in the list of commits and so on, and so maybe it's not so convenient. So I just copied the status of the application that we developed on Monday onto another folder that is now called the React QA Optimistic Update. And here we can go inside the client folder. We will have both folders, client and server, from now on, because we have the code for the client in one folder and the code for the server in another folder. Just remember that these folders are just for convenience. Actually, this code should stay on one host, on one machine. That's a client. I mean, the stuff that is served to the client, it runs on the client, and the other should stay on a server. That can be another machine, another host anywhere in the internet, okay? Just for convenience, we are developing on localhost. Otherwise, I should come here with 2 computers or just use some server somewhere in the internet, and every time I do a modification, upload the files and so on. So yeah, inconvenient, right? But I mean, remember this stuff, so nothing should be present, in short, outside this folder. Okay, just client and server, because there are 2 different machines, 2 different hosts, okay? I'm telling this to you because I've seen somebody in the lab had some configuration files outside and so on. That's not a place where you should put anything. There's only one thing you should put there for the exam. It's a README file. So it's just a text file just to explain what you did, okay? But just because it's an exam, okay? In practice, you don't use it in actual applications. Okay, so I think, no, I didn't install it yet. npm install. for the client and for the server as well. Let's create a server as well. So week 10, React QA server npm install in another terminal, modmon index, so I don't forget to restart the server when I change something. And the client npm run dev. Okay, let's open the application. So we recall how it works from last Monday. Okay, so let me open the inspector. Please open the inspector when you are developing, testing your application. That's the first thing I do at the exam, and my colleague will do the same as well. Because you see what's going to happen in the communication between the client and the server. So you understand how your application works. So, well, you can, the bot is already implemented for the server. I hope I didn't, yeah. Okay, the vote was already implemented with the server, sorry. Anyway, the edit didn't trigger anything, right? Alice 2? No, that's, oops. So, I guess maybe I loaded the wrong code. I double checked yesterday, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Answers not, sorry. So what's React QA update? Well, let's start from the other. Okay, that's too much implemented here. Sorry. So we go to the. Is it? No, there should be React QA. Ah, no, that's a wrong folder, sorry. Sorry, I started from the solution, sorry. Okay, let's create a new terminal. That was strange. Week 10, React QA update. Okay, that's called update, okay? Client, npm install. Good. Sorry for that. The server, is it the correct folder? Yes. Okay, just the client was wrong, sorry. npm run dev. Okay, so we close the old one, and we open the client. Okay. Okay, so let's test something. Okay, now it's working as I expected. So things are not connected to the server. Also the edit, 1000, save. Okay, it works, but update the state only on the client. It doesn't communicate with the server. You see here. When you want to communicate with the server, the only thing we implemented is the delete. You remember last Monday. If I click on the delete now, you see the request. It goes to the server. Okay, get a response, and the response was 200. Okay, that's fine. And then we updated the list of answers, because you see the get. The get is a request to the server just to refresh the state, what we call the rehydrating from the server. Okay, great. Now we need to do the same for the other functionalities. Okay, add, edit, and the vote. Okay, good. So the starting point is correct, luckily. Okay, so let's try to do something. Okay. So this is the app. We were seeing app just a minute ago talking about the states. Questions. Actually, I added a state for the question. Okay, but just because it's convenient. So at mount time, okay, I have one useEffect that loads the question, and the other, just the useEffect that loads the question, and when the question is loaded, I do the refresh answer list that basically is the API that gets the list of answers. And it's inside a function because I want to call it from many other event handlers. Okay. In particular, I called it. Oops. Let's do it. I called it here. No, the vote state. is the delete, okay? From the delete, I call the refresh answer list, okay? And just to let you know, I did a small modification, like you see, I put this in finally, okay? Because I always want to run this update in any case, regardless of the result of the operation that I'm sending to the server. So in this case, it's a delete. If there has been an error, it doesn't matter. I want to have the updated list of answers, okay? In general, I want to update the state. So I'm aligned with the state of the server, okay? That's important. Because we say that, client applications, web applications don't update themselves unless you do something, right? And we say the best thing to do is to refresh the state when you do an interaction with the server, okay? So if you do an operation like delete, add, edit, and so on, that's the best place where you can do an update. And do it in any case, even if there has been an error. I would say even more if there has been an error. So maybe you also understand why there has been an error. The user understands why there has been an error. Okay? So I would say the best place to put this call to the refresh answer list that in the end sets the state, so the new list of answers is exactly the finally. Okay? And again, once you get the answer list, again in a finally, you can put the waiting false, disabled false, and so on. Whatever temporary state you set because you are waiting for the response from the server and so on, if you put it in the finally, you are always sure that your application doesn't get stuck, being blocked because of the fact that you are waiting or there's been an error in the response, in the refresh, and so on. Okay? So don't be afraid of using the finally when it's needed. Okay? Okay, good. So now we try to implement, I would say, the add. That's probably the easiest one after the delete. Okay? So the add is already there. We saw it, right? Add answer. Okay? And now it's just on the client. We take the old state, set answer, with the callback answer list, and we add a new answer. Okay? I just add this status because I want this optimistic update, right? At the moment, since I'm not waiting for anything, if I add something, I think it will not show anything, right? Okay, it's just there. Because it's immediate, it's on the client side, there's nothing to show, okay? And nothing to wait for, okay? But let's do this operation, okay? So, we need to call the API for adding on the server, add answer, okay? And of course, something has already been prepared because otherwise I'm coding the 3 hours and it becomes very boring, right? So there is an API module where all these functions have already been implemented. But it's quite easy to implement them. Once you have one, you copy paste, okay? Maybe you handle the error in a reasonable way and then you copy paste and you handle the errors in the same way for all the calls, okay? So the add answer returns a new promise, fetch URL/answer with the method post. Don't forget to set the content type application JSON, otherwise the server doesn't understand what you're adding. It doesn't parse the JSON. So rec body doesn't have the content ready, okay? So that's mandatory, okay? Because we decided to communicate with the JSON format from client to server and vice versa. If you come to the lab and you have issues about this, of course we can help you. Debugging and finding these issues. Okay, and then the body is just JSON stringify of the object we want to send. And then we have to decide, there are some details that you need to figure out, especially for the exam. Like you have special formats for some data type, like the date and so on. Of course, you need to decide how to format them. In this case, I decided that I want a string with this format, okay? year, month, date, and the rest is useless. Okay. Otherwise, you could use the ISO format or whatever think it's appropriate, and depending on the type of data, you decide what to do. Okay. If it's a string, if it's already can already be represented as a string, that's fine, because it's a basic type for JSON. But JSON can only represent, remember, numbers, strings, booleans, and objects and lists. That's all. Okay. So you cannot just take a day.js object and send it through JSON. It has to be serialized in some form. And if you have you cannot let the library do the stuff for you, the work for you, because typically they don't do it for you. Okay. They don't transform it into a string. You have to do it yourself. This is just the example for the data. It could be any type of data. Data is very common, and so I would say probably you have to handle some data at a certain point for the exam. Maybe not 100% sure, but quite high probability. So, let's show an example for the data as well. And then the response, well, that's the user stuff. The same code in any API. You could even, move it to a function, okay? A common function and so on. So response, okay, that's okay. We will have a resolve, okay? So it's a promise, it's a resolved promise in the form of, it's settled as a resolved promise, so with a value and saying that has been successful. Or if there has been a problem, you can call reject, okay? Reject the promise with the value as well. But with the type of promise, of settled promise, resolve or reject, you decide what happened in the API. Okay, and so on the other side, you can have then catch or the await plus the try catch block. Okay, good. So add answer, we just need to pass an object. Okay, that's the object that will be converted into JSON with the content of the answer, right? So, but actually we have it. It's here because it's the same object we add to the list of answer objects in the answer list. Okay, so API add answer. That's fine. Why it's yes, because I'm inside this, it should be outside. Well, let's retype. Add answer. Okay. This is already working in principle, but I want to handle the errors. I want to disable things and so on. So it's better that we decide what to do in case of then. In case of catch, so rejected promise, in case of finally. Finally. Okay? So, finally, I already told you, I want to refresh. Okay? Refresh answer list, question ID. Question ID is a state. Okay? It's a state in the application. So, it's available in app in any place. That's fine. Okay, I need to pass it because, I could avoid passing it. I could have taken directly from question.id here because the function is defined here around the state, where the state is available, so you can create a closure. But it's up to you what you want to do. You want to have a more flexible function, you pass it. Otherwise, you create a closure, but the function is less useful for later in case you need it. Okay, and then I would say there's nothing to do. We refresh the answer list and that's all. Then it's not needed here. Okay, we have nothing to do if everything goes fine. Because we already said refresh answer list. Of course, if we have no finally, we say then refresh answer list. But catch at the end, refresh answer list. So let's put it in the finally, it's easier to understand. Okay? And catch, I would say in case of error, handle the error. Okay? That's good. That's good for the exam as well. But leave it for as the last thing you want to do. Okay, for the exam, because we cannot just give you points because you handle errors, but the rest of the application is not working. First, the application has to work, all states, useEffect, and so on in place correctly, and so on. And then you can focus on the errors as well, okay? But the errors is what changes between maybe 29, 30, 30 plus loud and so on, okay? It doesn't help you to achieve the 18. Hopefully not everybody wants to achieve 18. I mean, everybody submits something that is much better than 18 in terms of grade, right? But I mean, it's not the fact that you handle the error that changes significantly your final mark, unless, I mean, we need to decide how good it is in the top part, okay? So if you don't know what to do in the application, you already develop everything and so on, maybe you can focus to handle errors in a consistent and a good way, okay? Why this handle error doesn't give any error? Because I already wrote a function that you are free to copy and adapt as you see it fits for your case. So this handle error basically, well, apart from the console log, I'm not so a big fan of the console log, but I mean, when you are developing, it's useful to know what's happening, right? Then you can also remove them. And in short here, it goes inside the error object. If there are errors, it looks for the first error and so on. And it sets the error in what? In a state. You want to show an error? We already saw it in the forms. I mean, you need a state because you're in an event handler, and to show something, you need to set a state and trigger the re-render of the React component, okay? You remember the form. The form, you remember the error message in the form, right? We did exactly the same thing. There is a problem, you set the error, and then the error gets shown to the user. Of course, in the render phase, you need to have a place where you show something, right? Otherwise, it just stays in a state and it's not shown to the user, okay? So the error message is shown here, the alert. Here, I think we don't yet have an error. I mean, in the render, yes, we don't have it, right? So we need to add it somewhere. I think I added it inside the answer route, okay? Because I didn't want to add it, I mean, on top of the header bar, right? It's not so nice. So the answer route is basically what we are going to show when we finish all the operation, either the delete or the add or the edit or the vote, okay? That is always shown. That's the list is always shown, so it's good to show it in the answer route. So let's go to the definition of the answer route. Okay, okay, well, I already said it. Good, so props, error message, so I need to pass it, okay? And it's an alert, okay? The alert is a React Bootstrap component, that's fine. And when you close it on close, when you click on the eggs, you set the error message to an empty string, so it doesn't get rendered, because props error message for the empty string says don't execute this part, okay? So it just renders null, means nothing. Okay, but we need to pass it. So let's pass it. So let's go back. I'm not sure if there is a button to go back. Go back. Yes, great. So set error message is fine. Error message is passed. Okay, so it's fine. Okay, good. So add answer, catch, handle error, and so on. So I think we can test it, right? Disable. Yeah, no, the disable probably needs to be done before. Yes. Okay. Let's do the disable before doing the call. Oops. Oops, sorry. Okay. Okay. Though it doesn't change that much, because you remember, add answer returns a promise, so it doesn't wait. It passes on and goes to set disable true. Okay, but I mean, I would say just to write a cleaner code, I mean, easier to understand code, let's disable things before doing the add. Okay, save and test. not everything will be okay now, okay? We only have 3 because we deleted one. If we want to restore it, we need to copy the original database. We do it later. Add. So ABC, DEF. Okay, I clean the stuff so you can see the request. Add. I forgot to reload. I forgot to save the file, I guess. Save. No. I don't know. Why it doesn't show up? Add answer. Yes, set answer. Add answer. Let's put. Yeah, it doesn't show up. Why? I guess maybe we need to reload. ABC. DF. No. Oops. There's something wrong. I need to debug a little bit, but it's not bad, right? You can also check on the server side, by the way. Where is the server? Oh, you see, so bad, right? I mean, I'm editing the wrong file, right? Sorry, it happens so many times. Okay, that's why everything was already set, right? So, I mean, if you spot something wrong in these terms, I mean, just tell me. Sorry again. So, I mean, but what we wrote is correct, right? So, here, okay. I was editing the file of the solution I have because sometimes I need to do copy pasting just for being quicker. Okay, so let's save this file. Have a look. Yeah, let's restart everything so we are safe. Okay. And now the service not talking. What's wrong? Oops. Get 5173. So let's restart everything. Okay. So let's restart the server as well. Okay. When you do updates and you don't restart things, you rely on this hot updating system of Byte that sometimes doesn't really work very well. Okay? And so if you restart everything and it doesn't work, you need to worry, otherwise it's fine. ABCDF. Okay? Add. Oh, great. We got a post. The post is the one that adds to the server. We got 404, okay, that's fine. I'm not sure why, but we will debug, but at least we got a call to the server, right? Okay, good. Not found, why? Let's have a look. Request, that's the object, raw object. That's exactly what I'm going to do at the exam. Hopefully not with the 404, right? But then, question not found. Question not found. Let's go to this. Yeah, 404. Question not found. So, server is here. Index. Is this the correct file? Yes. Post API answer. A question not found. Okay. Red body question ID. I guess I forgot to set the question ID, right? Body question ID. Let's have a look at the request. No ID. Okay. I mean, we are making a more complicated application now. So actually, I can handle answers to multiple questions, right? So when I add a question, an answer on the server, I need to tell which question it refers to, okay? Which was not written here in the object, okay? answer because we are adding answers to a list of questions. We add the answer to a question that is the one that is currently shown in the application. So it is in the state of the application, okay? And the add form has no need to know which question we are adding to. Just the code needs to know, okay? So add answer, we need to tell that the question ID, okay? So okay. How did we handle it? I think I told it, I don't like it. I told it to the other component. Add. Upload, download, edit, delete. That's a form component. It doesn't matter. I will adjust this code when it's needed. To align it what we are doing here. Okay. Okay. It doesn't matter. So let's add it. Okay. Const new answer. That's fine. New answer. Okay. No. Question ID. Question ID. Okay. New answer. Yes. Save. Okay. So I'm adding a field, an attribute to the answer object with a question ID, because if you want to add it on a question in the server, there's a database, an answer to the server, there's a database, you need to have a question ID, because you need to know to which question you want to add the answer, okay? And so the API actually on the server, I would say correctly refuse a request for which a question ID doesn't exist, okay? Good. Let's try again. Okay, A, B, C, D, F. D, F. Okay, let's clean up. Add. Okay, post 201. Question ID, this time is there. Response, that's fine. The response contains the object just added plus the ID, which is not a question ID. This is the ID assigned by the server when you create a new element in the table. Okay? So it's a unique ID that is determined by the server. Okay? Good. I think you can also see it. 7 here. That's the ID. Okay? That is the ID determined by the server. Remember, you cannot determine this ID on the client. Okay? You remember that we did a trick on the client, but just because we didn't have the server. Okay? I think here it's not done. You remember the max, the all ID is +1 and so on. This is just a trick for the client. Once we add it, we get a real ID, real unique ID from the server. Okay? Okay, good. So basically the add is working. Okay? Now, if you reload the application, you will see the fourth answer. It's still there because it's on the server now. It's in the database, right? Okay. And if you look at the components and the list of answers and so on, where is up? Up. That's the state with the lists. For answer 2, 3, 4, 7, the IDs. IDs on the server side. Okay? Okay, good. Then, of course, we can delete it and it will work and so on. Oh, by the way, you see the hooks that we talked just before? 1, 2, 3, 4 style. No name, because they are just slots inside this array which is maintained by React. Okay? Okay, good. And let's fix the edit. Okay. Edit. Where was it? Both later. Edit is. I think it was called the save existing answer. Yes. Okay. So save disable true. Oh, this is still. That's a wrong one. Let's close it. Still. Okay, save existing answer. Okay, so API update answer, right? Update answer. Update answer. Answer. Okay, catch handle error. Now it copies from before. Save. Set disable true. Yeah, what was wrong? Ah, yeah, I forgot it. Set disable true. Set disable true. Okay, and now I will disable the buttons as well. Okay, so update answer, handle error, refresh, etc. Let's try. So save. Let's see if the auto reloading works. Let me open it. The network. So let's edit a new one. Okay, ABC, ABCD. Save. Put request. Text ABC, ABCD. ID 7. Okay. The ID is already there this time because we already loaded it from the database, not a new one, right? And the question ID, that's not probably the best thing we can do, but it's fine. 1. And if we reload the application, we will see it has been saved in the database, right? And you can also see what has been saved in the database here as well. It doesn't refresh. So let's close it and open it again. Just be careful of the fact that sometimes things don't refresh. Okay, ABC, ABCD. Okay, good. So what should we do now? Okay, we can make the answers lower on the server side so we can see the update, the optimistic update, I think. What is the put? It's put here. How do you make a response slower? Okay. How can you do it? I think there is an example already here. Set timeout. Okay. Oops. That was the delete. I mean, use it, but make sure that for the exam the delay is not too long, or just remove it for the exam, because it takes time. If every click I do, it takes 2 seconds. We do 20 clicks, means we lost 1 minute just waiting for the server, right? It's localhost. And if you want to show me the optimistic update and so on, we will find it in the code. Don't worry. I will recognize you did it. Okay, the put is this one, right? So REST.json. So REST.json, no much more changes. Okay, great. Save. Okay, it restarted because of nodemon. Let's try. Let's edit ABCD something more. Oh, it immediately redirects. But it took a little bit of time to see the answer, so it's better to see it on the when we change the value, okay? Because yeah, it took some time. It took 1 second, but yeah, since the application immediately redirects on the new page, I mean, showing the no, I should show the optimistic update. Why didn't show it? should show it. Because I'm setting, no, I didn't set it, right? You see, I didn't set it. Yeah, status this was updated. Save. Okay? So we change the state, the local state, and when we have the answer from the update answer, we refresh. But it takes 1 second. Okay? So what's the status updated? This status updated is taken here in the answer components. We saw it last time. So updated table 1, it makes it yellow, I think, if I remember correctly. So let's try. I guess we missed something this time. Each child should give a unique key prop. Okay, they can't access property format. A date is undefined. I guess we missed something. So answer component 40. 40. So it means there is something wrong in the date that we got back. Why it worked before? Yes, oh yes, ans. Okay, so we are copying the object. Okay, otherwise we are just inserting a property with the object inside. That's not what we expect. Okay, sorry. But you see, I mean, you do a lot of these programming errors. I mean, I do a lot, as you can see. Okay, you see the yellow, the refresh, it goes away. Okay, that's the optimistic update. But in a certain sense, it's not so bad that I do so many errors, right? So we can debug things. Otherwise, we are always there to ask AI what's wrong and so on. But at the exam, I will ask you what's wrong. Hopefully, nothing is wrong, but you need to be able to explain what's happening. Okay, good. Status update is fine. And let's do the vote, and then we finished. So voting. At the moment, you're voting, right, here, but nothing happens in the network. We're not updating the vote on the server side. So again, there is a vote answer. Hopefully we have an API to do it. Vote answer, ID delta, then catch, but I don't know, I think the final is better. Vote. What? Indeed. I mean, there's no reason to use. I mean, just copy what I did. I mean, the AI doesn't trust me, right? I mean, just kidding a little bit, but finally. Okay, no. Semicolon at the end. If you want, it's optional, right? Error, handle error, delta, I think that's all. Okay, good. Status updated. Okay, so status as before, right? Updated. Voted, it's good. Good guess, but I mean, we don't have the voted state. You can insert it and use a different color, but I mean, I think the yellow is fine. Okay? So, let's see what happens. Click, yellow, refreshed, it's fine. 2. Okay? And the 2 now is stored on the server. You see, I reload the application, the 2 is on the server, and you can go on the server and check. Okay? Again, I mean, I'm not sure if it's immediately updated, probably not. You need to open the database again. Yes, 2 is there. Okay? That's fine. And so basically, we connected the client and the server for the basic operations, add, edit, and also the vote. The vote is more specific of this application. I think you have the vote in the lab as well, because you can vote the films with the stars and so on. I think I already published the text, right? Yes, it's already there. Okay, complete client-server interaction. I think it's in the optional part, but try to do it. I mean, it's quite easy, I would say. Not very easy, but I mean, something useful for understanding things. Okay. So what's the stuff we should... Oh, yes. One more thing and then we finish. I mean, with the example. So you remember that we can delete something. We did it last time. I click on the delete, and the delete button is blocked. But what about the edit? You see, this is blocked, but the other one is not. Right? And then, well, oh, negative scores. It doesn't like the negative scores. And then it becomes a problem because, I mean, it's an inconsistent state. Okay, I'm clicking, it doesn't work. So maybe it's better to block all the buttons. So think in terms of what is good or bad for your application and for the user. Okay, so in the answer component, we had this state disabled, props disabled, but it was applied only to the button with the trash, right? To the delete button. Okay, let's do it for the others as well. Disabled, props disabled, disabled, disabled. We know, I mean, it's probably not so nice in terms of the user interface to block everything, but I mean, if it leads to an inconsistent state, it might be good. Okay, other people likes to use a model. A model, it means it's a window that comes over the rest of the application, and you cannot interact with the rest of the application. That's fine. As long as it's not like an alert or stuff like that, as long as it's managed by React. If you go into the React Bootstrap, there is this model window that you can easily create. If you really like this model system, that's fine. Okay, it's like many websites do it. I mean, you do an action, comes out, a window comes out, says, I'm doing the action. And when or maybe you need to press OK, or we finished, or press OK, whatever you want, and then you go back to the application. Maybe it's not a perfect application, but I mean, it's quite reasonable in terms of user interaction. As long as the action is important, you need to wait for the end of the action to do other things. Okay? I mean, if it's just voting, maybe I wouldn't block the application. Okay? But I mean, for deleting, it's better to block it. Now it has clicked, so it probably didn't reload something. But anyway, so it's better to block the actions that you don't want to perform. Okay, I need to block the add as well. The add. Oh, maybe the add can be left there. I mean, because adding is independent of the rest, right? So add can stay there. Okay. I think we did everything. We can, maybe we can just last test, just test what happens in case of errors. I mean, once you finish the development, okay? So that's for the, I mean, refining the submission for the exam, if we are talking about the exam. Let's just see what happens in case. So I go to the server and check the put, and let's trigger something. Yeah, there was list of errors, so it should work. So let's delete. The set. So actually, no, let's do it with the add. So, oh no, with the update. Okay. ID something that doesn't exist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Not the ID, question ID. Right? Okay. Let's see what happens. 3. Okay, we should get an error, right? No, it didn't check it. Well, maybe I can check it during the break. Okay, so I don't make you wait. I think they should. I want to trigger an error, but maybe it didn't check on the server side. No, it didn't check if the ID existed. So sorry, it was bad API. Okay, you should do the add. Okay, so let me just try the add, and if it doesn't work, we do it. Question ID, it's the add. Question ID. Okay, that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, just to trigger an error. Add. Yes, there is an error, or it's not shown. I guess we need to show it somewhere. Catch handle error. Maybe the handle error doesn't really get it. Well, I debug during the break, so it's easy. Okay, but we triggered the error at least, right? So response, that's what we found. Question not found, right? Question not found should arrive here at the handle error, but I mean I will see what's happening during the break, so we don't lose that much time, and you have time for the break as well. Okay. So, unless you have questions, we mostly finished the example, and if you have questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, yes, there is a question. Great. Okay, tell me.
I have this question when we first introduced the question ID to the answer.
Yes.
Before we introduced this question ID.
Yes. Yes.
Was getting an error.
Yes.
Not registering. But then when we introduced the question ID, it was working for the others as well. The other.
Yes. That's because the question is why in one case it worked and the other was not working, right? So with why with the question ID it's working? I mean, well, actually an actual question ID, right? I mean. This one, and the point is that how the API on the server is designed. This is the post, right? Because it's this is the add answer that goes inside the API file, and the API file is here. It's a post, right? So method post. So on the server side, you need to look for the post API answer. And there is this check, rec body question ID, and it goes to check if the question ID actually exists. Okay, and if it doesn't exist, it says 404 question does not exist. Okay, and why we are doing this? Because we want to maintain the consistency inside the database. Okay, it's a matter of consistency of data inside the database. I mean, there are different ways of achieving this behavior. One is doing the checks explicitly, as we are doing now, okay, with the code, JavaScript code. Otherwise, you can delegate this behavior to the database as well. I mean, you make the ID a foreign key. I'm not sure, but it should work also in SQL3. SQLite3, so this library we are using for the database. And so basically you do an insert, and with a foreign key that doesn't exist, it fails. Okay, so you delegated this check to the database, but the result is always the same. You shouldn't do this insert because an important part is missing, and you end up with an inconsistent state in the database. That's really something important. Thank you for pointing this out, because it's something that we check at the exam as well. Because having inconsistent data in the database is always a problem, right? Because then you have like answers that don't belong to any question. And people, I mean, attackers, or like we are in cybersecurity, so we talk about attackers, or I mean, malicious people or whatever, can insert answers just filling up your database and they are not connected to any question. And maybe sometimes you check how many answers you have inside the questions, and then you have the total number of answers, they don't match, you don't know why, your application is expecting they match, and it creates problems somewhere else, and so on. So we always want to have consistency in the data in the database, okay? And somebody has to check for this consistency, either the code or the database as well, okay? Any place is fine, again, for the exam, as long as if I question you about this, you know where the check has been done. Database is fine, code is fine, okay? But you need to do this check, okay? And that's why it failed. Unfortunately, I forgot to set it, and indeed, I would say the server was robust enough to prevent me from introducing inconsistent data in the database, okay? Okay, thank you for the question. Any other question? No? Okay, so let's break for 10